quick rundown on why it was set up and kind of what the criteria are, and sort of when it was last tweaked and stuff. That would be good. Thanks.
Sure, we'll do. So, in April 2001, the Capital Endowment Fund of $75 million was established using a share of the proceeds from the sale of Orion's investment in a gas company. That's where it came from. Then, more recently, in December 2018, Council, as part of the working of the funding working group, set the criteria and priorities for the earnings of the interest. They were to focus on strategic, larger projects that are not otherwise funded through rates revenue or other funding sources available to Council, and that they are to be split across civic and community applications, and that 40% and 60% to things for innovation, economic development and environment. And in the one of the attachments, we break down the grants over the recent and future years that have been given, that have been promised, and that split. And you'll be pleased to see it's fairly close to that 60-40. Now, just for your understanding of how the process works, as projects are identified to advisors, staff, etc., organisations, they come through and we ask them to submit a proposal on what they're looking to do, and that is assessed against the criteria that you as councillors set in December of 2018. We take that through very carefully. John has the sign off on whether they're eligible or not. If they pass eligibility tests, they then become an applicant and we take them through the process. And as groups are ready, we bring them to you. Sometimes we get applications that are in the early stage and we encourage them to defer for 6 months until their project is more, I guess, ready to go, or some of the fine-tuning's been done, and some of the examples in here are those. And then we bring them to you. I guess I would add that in that December 18 decision meeting, when you set that criteria, councillors said, look, we want to take a pretty wide view of what's going on in the community, across the community, and we want to see that so that then we can decide what to use capital endowment for. And that's what we've attempted to do.
Clarify, these are ones that meet the criteria.
Yeah.
But it's very, very broad criteria currently, and you could choose to fund or not to fund within that. Depending on whether you see that it meets the sort of larger strategic goals that we're looking for as a city.
And I guess the aspect of the criteria I didn't emphasise was that the benefits will be experienced now and into the future. So it's long-term stuff.
Okay.
Things with long-term benefit.
Okay, thank you. And before we get started with questions, I'm just really aware that we have, for today, quite a large number of sort of grant applications through various types of grants. And some of them, 600 took a certain amount of time, and then we spent a very long time on $30,000. We have another 5 organisations with grants here. I'm hoping that each of those won't have as many questions and as much time as the $30,000 one did. So if people could keep their questions really relevant and targeted for the funding round, that would be excellent. Thank you very much. Melanie.
I just wanted to note I've got a conflict with the Summit Road Society because I'm on the board.
Thank you.
I am the chair of the Summit Road
Protection
Authority, but it's separate to...
Yeah, so that's fine. You happy to move the lot?
I'm second.
Sam and Tim, we've got a mover and seconder for the lot. Do we have questions of staff on the applications? Pauline.
I think clarification around the City Council rec sports and events. So is that actually a council staff member that will be funded, or is it an arm's length one?
So it's a staff position for 2 years, and I'll perhaps invite Shanti to come and speak to it if you've got more questions on that.
Well, my question is really probably for you, that was one of the criteria being funding things that are not normally funded by rates.
Yep.
Would a council staff member normally be funded by rates?
It's the activity.
Councillor Cotter, we were absolutely anticipating this question, and we considered this before understanding whether this was eligible or not. This activity is not funded currently by rates or any other sources. The The reason that the application is for a council staff member to do it, because in this particular case, council are best placed to run this activity should you choose to fund it. They have the experience and the track record doing preliminary work. They've got a lot of experience in the operation of events, the sustainability aspects. More often than not, you'll see these are external applicants, but in this one, the council operation, the council staff were best placed, are better qualified than anyone else to do it. One of the criteria is the fact that there can be no expectation of ongoing funding and ongoing levels of service as a result of this. So we've satisfied ourselves that the application is for 2 years to get this programme established and self-sufficient. If that's not the case, then we've all made an error, but there will be no expectation whatsoever of ongoing funding through this scheme for this initiative.
Yeah, I can see that, it's just for 2 years, but why would it not come to the Sustainability Committee Fund then?
There isn't any funding in that currently.
Yeah.
So is this urgent, or can it, because that'll be replenished in the financial year?
Which fund are you asking about, sorry?
Isn't there sustainability?
The Innovation Fund.
Innovation and
Yeah,
sustainability.
there's no funding in that one currently.
Yeah.
No, but
Yeah.
there will be in July.
It's
You go, sure.
If the budget's set. I guess probably the key
Sorry,
question
can I
here.
just, so what was the answer? Is
Yeah,
next
yeah.
year's budget set?
This funding is urgent. We worked with a external consulting company, True North Consulting, and they have they've given us a 2-year implementation plan, which is already 8 months overdue. The current staff that are working on this project, over and on top of their existing workload, are already struggling to keep up, so it is urgent. If we don't move ahead with this, the program will fall over, and the leadway that Christchurch has made in terms of the rest of New Zealand and sustainable events will lose that leadway.
Okay,
I
thank you.
think, Pauline, the question needs to be here, like if council's priorities around climate change, leadership, waste minimisation and those kind of things are normal council processes, why do we not have staff working in this area doing this kind of role already? But that's probably a question for us to take to the CE, maybe as part of the annual plan or a long-term plan process. Yeah. Mike, then Yanni.
Thank you. Just a quick question on the Burnside Bowling Club. I see the total project cost is $52,000, and that's the amount that has been requested and recommended. There's 2 other sources of funding, both pending at the moment. Could you tell me a little bit about that? Are they expecting that funding, or?
The other sources of funding you were asking about?
Yeah.
So they will have to submit to gaming trusts if funding is not received, or dip into their own reserves to fund the project.
So they haven't actually put forward an application to the other 2?
Not at this stage.
To the gaming trusts? Okay.
And I guess the next question related is, what are their reserves?
They currently, they do probably have maybe 1.5 years reserves. So their cost to run their facility and all their programs, they would have enough to cover them for about 1.5 years currently. Their cash reserves, their cash flow does vary according to the tournaments and everything that they have. So for example, if they have tournaments that are rained out, a couple of tournaments rained out, they lose a huge amount of revenue through their bar sales and everything. So it really does kind of ebb and flow. I think they're prepared to take the project forward, but it would make a huge dent in their operating reserves.
Okay, thank you. Anne? Oh, sorry.
About the bowling club. So it's just the men's toilet. Is there a hope that would be open to become unisex?
The female toilet is already accessible. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. And this is a probably out of ballpark sort of question, but given that we throughout the city we have a real lack of accessible facilities for people with disabilities, is there any opportunity at all for that facility to be open to the, to be open to the public during operating hours, so that people who perhaps have disabled children, for example, who might need somewhere to go, is that an option that could be explored?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they do work with a lot of, with the disability sector quite widely.
Right.
So the Blind Foundation, they also work with the Laura Ferguson Trust.
Yes.
They invite schools to also use their facility. So it is, I think, classed as a community facility, especially during that downtime when they're not running tournaments.
Right. Well, that's another question just about a change table sort of arrangement. Has there been any discussion about that? Is also being something that is included?
What, sorry?
A change area for people with who are needing, who have got that sort of disability?
Yeah, it's my understanding that
Hang on.
which I probably would need to confirm,
Yes.
whether the facility would include the full change.
Anne, is the answer necessary for your decision on the grant funding? Or is it more
Well, it might be-
information for your interest?
It's for my interest, but it's also because I think
don't
that
think
there's
it
an
does.
opportunity here to actually
No, it
make.
doesn't.
It doesn't. So if we were to go down there, that road, then that would mean extra money, and whether the club would be open to that, that's all. So, yeah, maybe not a discussion for now,
Yep.
but something to perhaps think about going forward.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Yanni.
I just wanted to ask about the events funding, the Rec and Sport Unit funding. Why don't the private event organisers pay for that service? Or do they?
These guys know who you are.
Not sure.
Introduce yourself.
Sorry, just to introduce myself, I am Shanti Pittavino and currently work in the events team at Council and seconded to Christchurch NZ at the moment. Sorry, was your question why the external event organisers?
I was just wondering how much the external events contribute to this.
So the external event organisers are paying, they pay for their own waste sorting providers at the event. They pay for the waste to be sorted and diverted. However, what we're asking for is a resource to help coordinate this approach, to train the event development team who write the permits and also the waste sorting providers and the vendors to make this program self-sustainable and part of the process.
I just don't quite get it. Like, if we're providing a service to these private events, Electric Ave, I don't know how much money they made, but $180 a ticket, 20,000 people, huge amount of, cost, I know, with the event, but also probably a huge amount of profit. Why wouldn't they be fully charged for this service?
So they are paying for their waste sorting service, but the resource that we're asking for is to coordinate the approach. And yes, Electric Ave and other commercial events have participated, but a number of external community events have also participated, and they are free community events as well and don't have an income to pay for such a service.
I get it for the community, non-profit events. I don't get it for the private events. I see there's like a Vodafone Christmas party, for example, listed.
Can I just check in though? Part of that, Yanni, is, so the question is, would they go ahead with the waste diversion and more eco-friendly events if they were having to pay for it fully?
They would not be able to afford it, from my understanding and the work that we've done over the last 3 years. It's essentially like when you apply for a permit, they don't have to pay for that for the event, and this would be part of that process and embedding it within that.
Thanks. And Nigel?
I was just saying that's part of the process to try to make this sustainable. So the larger events, like you just referenced, Yanni, will help to subsidise some of the community events, so we can have an entire view of how this works, not just for the larger events, but for the smaller events. So this is about giving the community, the eventing community, a hand up, not a hand out. So making that, we're working with them to provide a solution to this issue.
Okay.
But
Making it a habit for everyone.
I guess what I'm struggling, we've already done a huge amount of work in this. We've had the trial events. So I'm just sort of struggling to see why there's a need for ongoing funding. Because clearly people know kind of what to do, and
some of the proportion of events in Christchurch know what to do. There's still a huge amount of work on other events and other aspects of sustainability. At the moment, we've only focused on packaging diversion. There's other areas of event sustainability that need work as part of that whole RIGI process. So in terms of the future, at the moment, we've just been able to do what we can manage, but there is a huge scope of what we could do in the next 2 years.
Right, and just a final question was, are there any other groups that are doing this?
In
Like-
Christchurch, or
Well, yeah, like, and I mean, there's a number of stuff like in some of these festivals where it says, you know, there's a waste sorting company, Our Daily Waste, or
So those are the
volunteers.
stakeholders and partners that are involved. The project that we're talking about at the moment is coordinating all of those companies and all of those events, as well as the waste sorters, the waste companies, Living Earth, for example, and the packaging companies. So yes, there are companies involved, but they all have a different part of the project, and we're asking for a coordinator of that project and other sustainability initiatives for Christchurch. We have an opportunity here to be leading in terms of events and bidding for events as a city approach. As far as I know, we're the only city doing this in Australasia, and we're well ahead of the game, but we just can't let it slip now.
Thank you. Before you leave there again, because I know you've left and come back, are there any other questions on that particular application right now? No? Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions on any of the other applications? Pauline?
And on the Braintree, which is, it's a capital work, $5 million building they want to build in quite a prime location in a new development in Papanui, which is probably quite expensive real estate. And of that 5 million, they're really just wanting 100,000 from council before they've even raised the rest of the money.
So they've applied for 250,000 from council, and 100,000 is the staff recommendation. They're also applying for 250 from Rata and 250 from Internal Affairs. Their funding rounds for this open very shortly, early March. They've raised, I got an update from the chair just this morning, they've raised, as well as their organisation's contributions, they've raised donations of 600,000 and have about 400,000 more that are sort of pending, hoping to be confirmed. So they're well on their way towards that.
But they still have to raise 4 million before they can pick up the council's 100,000.
Yeah.
I'm just really wondering if our contribution is really going to make that much difference when we could probably do something better with that 100,000.
Well, that's, I suppose, up to yourselves.
Yeah,
but from Braintree, for them to hit that 4 million target, I think is quite responsible because they're raising almost all the money to go ahead and do it. And we wouldn't release that grant funding until we had evidence they had reached that hit go target. And if they don't, then the funding will return to the pool to be allocated to other applicants in the future. So it's not a just hit and hope, but the timing of the other funding rounds would certainly make a contribution and give them confidence. So it's a bit of a chicken egg of when do we come in? Do we come in now? This is the timing of our round. Or do we defer and they don't get that leg up?
But I guess it's more, my question is too is around, is this our thing, you know, when it's a partnership between the dementia...
Councillor Cotter, it's a little like Brendan Smythe outlined earlier. Quite often external parties will say, do the council support this? Have you got a gesture? This is a modest gesture of support. It's a good cause. Any more and the balance of the fund is affected.
Actually, that's fine, John. That gives me... Thank you. I appreciate that. It is a gesture. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Because we've got to move in a second to Jimmy. Quick question.
Because the 5 application, first one, second one, third one, and fourth and the last one, your funding requirement, you know, if not met, you know, either some of them is at the end of June 2020, 2021, 2022. What's the rationale about difference?
Yeah, partly to do it's the difference is bespoke to the applicant, their project, and the time frame around it. For example, part of the reason you may choose to grant to Burnside Bowling Club is they've got the World Champs Disabled Bowls event coming up quite promptly. So here's an opportunity to get them behind them now. Now, if they don't find a way to go ahead with that project by a certain time, there has to be a point where that funding is returned to council. So in that case, it's earlier. For others, their programs take a bit longer to get going, and therefore we've given them a little bit more time to make that project a reality before we say, okay, it's not going to happen, we rescind that grant. So we don't pay the grant until it's ready to go, but there needs to be a point where that grant can come back into the pool for others to apply to, and those are those dates, and it's based on the specifics of that project.
Okay, if that's true, like item 1, I'm not sure Burnside Bowling Club, why they apply for funding so late? Because if today we approve, but if, in case, you know, the end of June, they cannot commit those funding requirements, then we will return to the council capital endowment fund. Well, it's only 4 months. I don't know.
No, next year.
21.
21.
Oh, no, 20, not 21. On page 89.
Yeah,
The
it is
Oh, just
one,
I was looking at the wrong one.
21
Yeah.
more appropriate.
this year should be next year, or whether it's typo mistake.
Isn't that bad because it's going ahead immediately and they're in a position to go and need to go now for the event?
Are they expecting to do the work in the next couple of months? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thumbs up from the back row.
Thumbs up
Yeah.
from the back row.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. They're going to do the work. Yeah.
Yeah,
Excellent.
yeah, it is correct.
Excellent. Any further questions that are completely relevant to the actual decision being made, rather than just for interest?
Just in terms of the Brains Trust, thinking about the 3 organisations that are coming together for that, would they in the past have actually applied for funding separately? And is there a sense that they're going to be working collaboratively together, which could mean that they're going to save money along the
Yeah, there will
along
be
the
savings, and that's evidence from that comment made by the CDHB executive. 2 of those groups do apply for funding now to strengthen community for their ongoing operational costs. Some of those costs will remain consistent, but there'll be other efficiencies, so we can look at that when they apply.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder. Is there any final questions? Thank you very much. Any debate? Yanni?
Can I just ask that you put them separate?
Absolutely.
And I just wanted to talk about the bowling club because, you know, like as a council, we really want to encourage accessibility. So I'm really supportive of that. I guess I've personally seen the events that this bowling club has hosted in the past, and to see the events that they've got coming, it's fantastic. So I think this is a great use of this fund to support what is effectively a civic asset. Although it's in Burnside, it actually caters to bigger events that come to the city, and I'm just so supportive of it. I think it's great that groups are making these efforts. I'm really concerned about the Rec and Sport Unit grant, and I won't be supporting that, not because I don't believe in what we're trying to achieve, but it to me feels uncomfortable that council would be using capital endowment to basically fund a service that we're providing, but also that, you know, so many of these private events should actually be of an ability to do it themselves, and it should be part of, if we're giving events funding, a requirement for them to do it. I do think the expertise has been built up. The events that I've certainly attended, I've seen that these companies, private companies, seem to actually know what they're doing, and they seem to be doing a really good job. So I just personally can't quite see the need for the service, but also that this should be the right place for it to be funded.
Okay, any further debate? Tim?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say to staff, just the variance of this is really good, and I think that shows that, you know, that you're really looking at what we've got to fund and where the needs are. So thank you for that. Just with regards to our funding of the Rec, Sport and Events Sustainability Advisory role, I think that's really important. I think sometimes we need to work and lead. I think that if a lot of the work that has been done in the past by our staff, we wouldn't be where we are. I mean, I've been in the events game for a very long time, we just won't go there. But I mean, it's gone from, you know, like dumpsters to absolutely going right through it. But we need to coordinate, we need to get better. If we're going to start charging and look at charging, then we should be charging for our noise control and everything else. And I'd have to say that, you know, the quality would go, at the moment, these organisations and these groups and these private promoters want to work with us, and that is absolutely key, because that's the way to break down the door. So it's better they open it and we work with them than they hide it. So well done.
Thank you. Anyone else? No, in that case I will put them separately. First of all, Burnside Bowling Club. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Any against? That one's carried. Secondly, the Canterbury Brain Collective. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? That's carried. Rec, Sport and Events Unit Sustainability Advisor role. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against?
No.
That's carried. Yanni, would you like that recorded?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. For Kiko Centre, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Any against? That's carried. And Summit Road Society, all those in favour please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? That's carried. Thank you very much. Thanks.